Coming up on The Sporting Chef.
On The Sporting Chef Show, I'm going to give you my top 10 things to make your game taste better. Also on the show, we have Stacy, Maria, Rene, Susie, and Buddy. So, you know, I've been cooking game for a long, long time, and there's a few things that I do to make my game taste better when it gets to the table. And the way I learned this mostly was by doing the wrong thing. The things that I do to bring game to the table is very, very simple. And of course, number one, it starts in the field. For instance, on a 100-degree day in Central Coast, California, where I shot this blacktail, had I left it on the ground, it would have spoiled. It would have tasted bad. So the number one thing you want to do starts in the field. Get your game cleaned, cooled as soon as possible. Number two, proper aging is important. John McGannon, who's been on the show forever and ever, is our in-house aging guy, dry aging guy. He dry ages his ducks. He dry ages everything. Some things I'm going to brine, something he's going to dry age. But it's important that the animal goes through the stages. First, rigor mortis, and then what dry aging does is it actually is going to release the enzymes, break down that meat, and it's going to be a much more tender piece of meat when it comes to cooking. Now, the rule to properly age your antlered game is 3 days per 100 pounds. If it's an older animal, I'm going to give it probably closer to a week. All right, so that's 2 out of the 10 things that I do to make my game taste better. Now I want you to check out Stacy Harris. She knows all this stuff and more. Here's Stacy.
Today I'm going to be cooking fried flounder with a Loquat mustard glaze. This is a spectacular dish and it should take no time at all to make. The first thing you'll do is to score the flounder so that it'll lay flat and you can get the seasonings in it into the skin. Then I'm going to put a little bit of garlic powder and I'm going to just rub it in just to make sure that it kind of gets inside where I have scored it. I'm going to put a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. I'm gonna put it in, it's about half and half flour and cornmeal, and I did white cornmeal. And I've been getting my oil hot. So you want it nice and hot, about 350. And then we're gonna put it score side down, skin side down, into the skillet. Okay, to make the sauce, I've got Loquat jelly. I'm gonna put about half of the jar and get that warm. And then I'm gonna put about a tablespoon and a half of mustard. And we'll start from there. Then I'm gonna taste it and we'll see. Time to flip. Okay, so I'm gonna remove this to my board and I'm gonna let it rest for a minute. Look at this stunning flounder. Is that beautiful or what? Okay, I've got my sauce, and this is the consistency that you want it. You're just gonna rub it on the hot fish, and some people put it under the broiler, but I really don't see the need for that right now. And there you go.
I don't cook a duck or a goose without brining, and what a brine is a simple salt solution. Number 3, to brine or not to brine, and I say yes, brine it. Especially upland game, waterfowl. I don't brine antlered game. I will be more of a dry age marinade guy on that. So High Mountain Seasoning is my go-to brine. The cure in there will actually turn the red meat a little bit more reddish than purple. If you put a little brine on there and let it soak, especially with the waterfowl, it's going to get the extra what looks like blood but is just actually natural juices in there. And it's going to mellow out the flavor. And make sure that your brine is under 40 degrees, between 34 and 40 degrees. You don't want to take your ducks and soak them in warm brine. bad things will happen. Next up on the show, we have what we call Chef Notes, where we talk to notable folks from around the country on how they prepare their fishing game. The short version is here. The long version is on the sportingchef.com website, Chef Notes. So Rick, how did you end up doing rooftop dinners? What's that all about?
It was an accident, really. I got invited to do a cheese tasting on the rooftop, and we did it. I grew into a full-on dinner,
Right.
And that was about 4.5 years ago, and we've been doing it every year since.
And did you go to culinary school?
I did, yeah. I went to a local school here in Huntsville. I learned more off campus than I did on campus.
Right. Favorite style of cooking for you? Do you have Asian, Italian? Is there one influence more than another?
If anything stands out, it's comfort foods.
Yeah, your comfort food doesn't look like,
No.
it just doesn't look like a big hunk of meat and a baked potato, which is a comfort food for a lot of people.
Right, right.
And presentation, I mean, you've heard, obviously, that, you know, we eat with our eyes, but it still has to taste good, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it can be really pretty, but if it sucks, it still sucks.
The presentation is to me utmost important, but you have to be able to back that up with some flavor.
Sure. Chef Rick Vonk, Huntsville Rooftop Dinners on Facebook. Check him out. Check out the Rooftop Dinners. The top 10 game hacks are down, 7 to go, and up next, sea bass, bison, and buddy, all ahead on the Sporting Chef. Welcome back to the Sporting Chef Show, where I'm giving you my top 10 personal things that I do to make my game taste better. Okay, number 4, processing. When I break down a duck, I have different parts of that duck that cook differently. The legs and thighs, you want to go low and slow. They're very sinewy. And the breasts, I cook very quickly. I like them fast and hot. Also, anything that's not muscle on that antlered game, remove it. Be careful when you process. Take a little extra time on those hindquarter muscles, remove the silver skin. Once you've got those parts broken down, it's important that you store them properly. Exposure to oxygen is how freezer burn happens. If you use a game saver, vacuum sealer like this, then what it does is it completely prevents exposure to oxygen. And of course, once it's been sealed, you want to make sure that you label and date it so that you don't have what I call UFOs, the unidentified frozen objects in your freezer, and you want to use the oldest stuff first. Up next, we've got Maria Hesse from Edible San Diego magazine. She's coming to you from our favorite place for fish, Catalina Offshore Products.
We're cooking today a white sea bass that's hook and line harvested out of Baja, California, or I should say off the coast of Baja, California. Salt and pepper. I like to do both sides because we've still got the skin on. We want that to crisp up really nicely. And we have our plancha grill here on our Camp Chef stove. And I'm going to go flesh side down first. It's nice and hot. We threw some peanut oil on there. And then I'm showing you, it's a simple sauce that goes really good with everything. It's a ginger scallion sauce. I'm just gonna heat this oil up low we're making a smaller batch of the scallion sauce today, so about a half cup is fine. And you just need about a 1/4 cup of ginger. So we have ginger, and then I cut up a bunch of fresh scallions. We're just gonna add a little bit of rice vinegar. You can use cherry vinegar. This is a pretty flexible recipe. A little bit of soy sauce. I'm actually gonna add a little bit of gochu pepper here as well because I'm half Korean and we like our gochu pepper. Once your avocado oil is nice and warm, and you can use any oil. It's a pretty flexible recipe. Grapeseed oil works really good. I don't know if you can catch that there, but it's pretty awesome. Basically starting to cook the sauce. We're gonna check on our sea bass, see if it's ready to be flipped. It's got a nice brown crust. Gonna add a little bit of fresh lemon. And I made some cucumber kimchi earlier today out of Persian cucumbers, just some gochu pepper, a little bit of sesame oil, garlic, ginger, green onions, sesame seeds. It's really simple, it's really satisfying. So we got our sea bass ready here on our plancha grill and the camp chef stove that we love because it's awesome. As you can see, the skin is nice and blackened here. I'm just gonna put it in the bowl. We're gonna dress it with the ginger scallion sauce. Just adding on some of the furikake almonds. And now I'm gonna add a little bit of my cucumber kimchi that I made earlier today. I like to garnish with a little mint. Here you go, Scott.
5 down on my top 10 list, number 6, I've already kind of touched on. It's the low and slow versus fast and hot. So how do you know which part you should cook low and slow and which part fast and hot? The parts of the animal that do the least amount of work, for instance, a duck leg, they're swimming around, they're going to be sinewy. Shoulders, hindquarters, shanks. A deer shank is running all the time. It's being used all the time, whereas on that back strap, on the back of the back, or the tenderloin on the inside, they're pretty much just going along for the ride, so they're not real sinewy. So that's how you determine which part to go fast and hot, which part to go low and slow. Number 7's coming up, but first I want you to check out Chef Rene Boyzo. I've spent some time with Chef Rene in Huntsville, Alabama at Purveyor. He is an incredible chef, self-taught, learned from working in all these other restaurants around the country. Really, really talented. Here's Rene with a super recipe from Purveyor in Huntsville, Alabama.
So today I'm going to prepare a bison and duck burger for you guys. I did 30% duck and 70% bison. Like I said, I wanted to keep it simple, just a little bit of salt, a little bit of fresh black pepper. I want to highlight the tomato and onion jam. Therefore, I want to keep it simple. I'm going to start with a little bit of shallots. You want the acidity of the tomato kind of like go away. So you're looking for the sweetness. In this case, I'm using duck fat, salt. And from this point, you're going to notice some of the tomatoes start getting a little blisters. And you're going to go back to low. You want this sauce to simmer, so it might take a couple hours. So what we're going to do, we're going to deglaze the pan. And in this case, I'm going to use a little bit of vinegar. And we're going to add a little bit of brown sugar, sorghum, local sorghum. A lot of people know about molasses. We're going to let it simmer a couple hours. You know, you want to have everything else ready before you cook your beef, because if not, you're going to end up overcooking. Have a little pancetta, the eggs from the duck, crispy shallots. You kind of want to cook your bun at the same time you're doing your protein. And the reason why I put the jam on top of the burger before they're done, because I want that flavor to infuse with the meat, right? And this is the same reason why I'm putting the cheese earlier, kind of like it melts with it. This is how you want your cheese to be melted on burger. So here we have what I call a sun-dried tomato ketchup. So I'm gonna hit the bottom with just a little bit. You know, this is my version of mayonnaise, which is a ginger, creamy ginger aioli. And to have on the healthy side, right, we did the watercress salad with a cilantro pesto. So this is your burger, nice, crispy. And don't be afraid of the jug running, you know, because you can hit it with a chip. In this case, we have our house-made cassava chips. So this be just great by itself, yeah. So this was my take on a bison and duck burger. And just look at this beauty.
More ahead with my list of things that will make your game taste great. And Buddy and Susie have plenty to share as well. 6 down, 4 to go. Welcome back to the Sporting Chef Show, my top 10 list on how I make my game taste better. Seasoning. You've probably heard that you shouldn't salt meat before you grill it or before you cook it. After about 10 minutes, you'll see these little droplets that come up, that the salt draws the liquid out of the meat. And then if you don't wipe that off, when you go to brown it, it's not going to brown quite so readily because you've got that moisture on the outside. So go ahead and season it ahead of time. But before you go to put it into a skillet, pat it dry so that when you put it in the skillet, it's not competing with all this moisture. and it won't brown quite so readily. Next up, Susie Jimenez. Her food is beyond compare. Here is Susie.
For all of you pheasant lovers out there, ooh, I got something for you guys to spice up your little like dips with. So we pushed a bit of some pheasant breast, little celery that's gonna go into it. Once you pull it all apart, then you're gonna use yogurt. You can use mayonnaise, you can use crema, you can use whatever you want, but you need something to bind it. Some cilantro, and then avocado. Now the avocado is really gonna bind it, but it's also gonna give it that nice creamy texture that it needs. And you're just gonna dice it right in there, scoop that right in there. A little bit of lime juice. And of course we need to spice this up somehow, right? So we got High Mountain Seasonings, and they got a poultry rub. And this is gonna be nice, tangy, but it's also gonna have that oregano and herby flavor that you need. So once you put the avocado in there and the spice, we're gonna mix this up. We're gonna put this right in the middle. And you got a pheasant salad to dip into.
Number 8, and now a word about marinades. The marinade should enhance the flavor of your game. With a quail, with pheasant, with a lighter flesh game, I'm going to use a marinade that's not nearly as pronounced in flavor, and there's usually going to be an acid in there, whether it's lemon or lime or some white wine. But be careful with acidic marinades because they will actually cook your wild game. Next time you're going to cook an elk steak or a deer steak, olive oil, salt and pepper, and garlic, and don't overcook it. That's number 8. Number 9, you want to replace bad fat with good fat. There are obviously variables that affect how things taste, whether it's what they eat, how old they are, that kind of thing. But if you've got an animal and the fat isn't great, like an old Boar feral swine, you know, I get as much of that fat off as I can. When it comes to something like a nice fat mallard, what I do is I put it skin side down in a skillet. Duck fat tastes good. I save all the fat from my ducks. I tell you, it's every bit as good as any bacon fat. Next up, we've got Buddy T, who has been with the show as long as I have. Here's Buddy.
Here's the latest thing to come out of the smoke vault. I was raised over in Louisiana, and Tasso was a big thing over there. Generally it's made out of pork, but some people do beef. Well, here's the latest tip from my brothers to make it out of venison or that wild hog. And what you end up doing is brining it from 12 to 24 hours. I use that High Mountain seasoning, trail dust, bayou bass, and I add a little garlic and a little bit extra salt. Then you put a bunch of paprika in there. After your brine time is over, drain that off, add some more paprika. Well, being I'm in Texas now, I threw in some chili powder. Okay, I got this loaded on the smoker, turned up the heat to get the wood smoking, then I'm gonna just move it to warm. Now you're gonna ask yourself what you're gonna do with this. Use it to flavor beans or peas, cut it up in eggs for breakfast, or you can just eat it like it is. That paprika and that chili powder, it gave it a kind of taste I'm looking for.
Now I've got one more tip that's going to be a game changer when it comes to cooking wild game, and I'll bet you can guess what that is. Stick around and find out up next on The Sporting Chef. Okay, this week on the show, I've got my top 10 things that I do to make my game taste better. 9 down, number 10. For those of you who have watched what I do, you know what I'm going to say. Do not overcook your game. Let me show you what my venison or elk steak looks like when it's done. That's me. That's a medium rare, and if you give it a little bit of squeeze, you got juices coming out, that is going to melt in your mouth. There are those who prefer something that looks like that, which is cooked all the way through, which is at least well done. If you like a well done steak and a baked potato, I'm not saying you're wrong. But what I would like you to do is at least just take 5 or 10 seconds out of the rest of your life and try just a little bite. Nothing bad's gonna happen, just a little sample of that rare to medium rare that you might have decided a long time ago is unfit to eat because, I just can't eat it unless it's cooked all the way through. All right, so that's my top 10. We will post this top 10 online as well. Special thanks to Stacy, Maria, Rene, Susie, and Buddy. As always, it's not just about me. There's a whole bunch of people that make the Sporting Chef show happen. In particular, it's our sponsors like Camp Chef, High Mountain, Weston, Game Saver, and Worksharp. Without them, we wouldn't be here. Check us out on sportingchef.com, all these social media channels, My Outdoor TV, where you can see not only Sporting Chef and Dead Meat shows, but thousands of hours of other shows from Sportsman Channel, World Fishing Network, and Outdoor Channel. I'm Scott Leysath, the Sporting Chef, and as always, I will invade your house next week as well.